Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Most of us know the difference between fiction and reality. Whenever we sit down to play and roll some dice, like for example to be adventurers trying to slay a dragon, we know that when it's over, we have to go back to our actual lives. You know, where dragons aren't real, and it's a lot harder to sleep through the night and achieve a successful long rest. But every now and then, someone decides the game isn't just a game. They take the lore a little too seriously and it starts disrupting their daily lives. Like recruiting a planetary defense force levels of disruption, and suddenly you're not playing a sci-fi campaign on the weekend, you're getting drafted onto someone's very real plan to save Earth from aliens. Today's story follows a teenager who just wanted to roll some dice. Instead, he got pulled into a LARP run by a guy in full Starfleet gear who absolutely thought it was all real. So if you've ever said my game master is kind of intense, then you haven't met someone like Crazy Ted. Today's treasure was submitted to the lootgoblinstories at gmail.com by an individual that wants to go by Kid Cthulhu. And the story's called The Character Sheet Should Have Been a Red Flag, The Ballad of Crazy Ted. Okay, this happened way back in 95 or 96 when I was a mere lad of 16. I was my group's forever dungeon master, and I was always creating some new RPGs of varying quality. This part of suburban New Jersey didn't exactly have a big gaming scene, so almost all the players in the town were basically part of my group. One day, I'm at the mall with one of my good friends, a fellow player, let's call him Geist, after his favorite Advanced Dungeons & Dragons character. We're just goofing around the arcade and wasting time when Geist nudges me. There goes Crazy Ted. Ted was a short dude in his mid to late 20s dressed like an off-brand G.I. Joe character. Combat boots, faded gray BDU pants, a black turtleneck like Sterling Archer with a very prominent Starfleet badge, a black Army Ranger's beret with some Star Trek pins. He had an intense stare and practically marched when he walked. He passed us and exchanged terse greetings with Geist. I never saw this guy before, and considering how small our social circle was, I was at a loss as to how Geist even knew him. We were all OG otakus, and we engaged in some anime small talk. Then there was talk of RPGs, and Ted explained he had a sci-fi one of his own design and was looking for recruits. Despite the derisive nickname, I thought he seemed pretty cool, maybe because I also had a crazy nickname and I too had some unusual fashion choices. I didn't get an off-putting vibe. I offered to give his game a shot and told him he could find me at the local Blockbuster Video. Geist rolled his eyes, but I thought nothing of it. Over the next 2 weeks, Crazy Ted would pop up at the old Blockbuster during my shifts and we started talking. Each and every time I saw him, he was dressed in his homemade Starfleet uniform. One night he comes in and says, "You want to meet up and go over the recruitment plan?" We agreed to meet at a local library on a weekday night. My folks dropped me off since I didn't have a car and Crazy Ted would drive me home. Neither my parents nor I thought anything was weird. The library was deader than a crypt, and we took over the entire table near the D&D books. Crazy Ted pulls out a huge folder and starts going over the lore. It was a lazy mashup of Star Trek, Macross, so Robotech stuff, and something else, possibly Babylon 5. It's been a long time. While he was droning on about Earth using Macross Veritech fighters and forming the Federation, he hands me a character sheet. He had these nicely printed homemade character sheets like the ones I used to make in the ancient version of Microsoft Excel. It looked like a very generic D&D clone, but without any armor or to hit information. There were additional sheets that looked like old Battletech mech sheets that I was not really familiar with. Nothing seemed too outrageous, but something subconsciously was bothering me about it. Crazy Ted starts going on about the classes and roles within the weird lore. He makes an offhand comment about the Empress Royal Guard. I thought that sounded interesting, but he cut me off mid-sentence. All Royal Guards have to be homosexual. There are rigorous tests to make sure, he explains while also mentioning the Empress is his real-life girlfriend. At this point, he lets it slip that the program, as he calls it, is more of a LARP than a tabletop game. Wait, hold on. So you're telling me it's a LARP, which means they act a lot of the stuff out? What kind of tests are you running, man? That was kind of weird when I thought it was just a tabletop game thing. But what does he even mean by that? And the fact that he called it a recruitment plan as opposed to like a session 0 or just creating characters for a system. Yeah, I'd already be really weirded out. And the fact this guy is your ride home, I feel so bad for you, man. Crazy Ted gets more animated as he talks about the building of the Starship Bridge in the Warp Core when it finally hits me. The character sheet has a spot for name but doesn't specify player name or character name. Even the second edition D&D sheets had this crystal clear demarcation. Ted, is this name part for your character's name or the player's name? He grows silent, looking at me in utter confusion. I try to explain myself as I start realizing things like the character class seems ill-defined and that the sheets and books don't have any game names on it. I mean, is it player name or the name of the character in the game? Crazy Ted's gaze narrows, and I feel like I'm being stared down by an apex predator. The air grew cold, and you could cut the tension in the room with a Vorpal sword. Game? Game? This isn't a game, he says. They are coming, and this is the training program to get humanity ready for the coming fight. He then pulls out warp core schematics and then unfolds a huge blueprint. He explains that he used to work at Earl, and that's where he got this nuclear power plant diagram that will be the basis for his warp core. Earl Naval Base is a well-known base in New Jersey that famously used to house nuclear weapons. The alarm bells in my head start ringing. It dawns on me that I'm a miner in an empty library that's closing for the night, miles from home without a phone, since it was the 90s, and my ride home is delusional. Crazy Ted goes off on a flurry of more insanity, trying his best to make the program sound as appealing as possible. The honor of being humanity's first line of defense. How cool it will be to zip around in a Valkyrie fighter jet. Then he went off on a bizarre tangent about phasers. Yeah, I'm sure that all would have been cool if that's what he signed up for, but this dude just didn't want to be the forever DM again, you know? He just wanted to have one game where he could play as a player and not have to do all the prep work. He's not trying to be raided by the feds, man. And then Crazy Ted says, I'm working on miniaturizing phasers so they can be hidden in Star Trek models. Imagine you're doing security at a con when suddenly a crazed fan draws a knife and lunges for Shatner. Then bam! You lay him out with a volley from your phaser disguised as a Klingon bird of prey. Who would think the quiet guy in the Starfleet uniform holding a model was a security guard packing heat the whole time? I went into compliance mode, nodding along and smiling nervously. I had to cut him off because the library was closing and I had to get home. I think you could sense how weirded out I was, especially when I entered his beat-up red IROC-Z. To break the tension, he starts telling me a cringy story about a past sexual conquest completely unprovoked. I was never happier when he pulled in front of my house and I got the hell out of that car. I told Geist about it the next day and his reaction was a mix between abject horror and nonchalant, yeah, that tracks. We never said anything more about it and I tried my best to keep my distance from Crazy Ted. He still came to my Blockbuster a few times in a vain attempt to recruit me and introduce me to the Empress. At least she seemed to think of it as a LARP and not a genuine attempt to jumpstart the Federation before the alien first strike happens any day now. I also found out that Crazy Ted's elite corps were just two other Star Trek superfans who may not have been totally bought into Crazy Ted's whole spiel. Eventually he got the hint and stopped trying to recruit me. I never saw him again and nor was he ever mentioned again. Life moved on and I never really thought about this weird episode of my high school days until relatively recently. I really should have asked Geist more about Crazy Ted. Where did he come from? How did Geist know him? You know, since we all have the same friends for the most part. It's a little late for that now that Geist is gone. Sorry to hear Geist is gone. TLDR, weird Star Trek adult tries recruiting gullible teens with the pretense of a sci-fi RPG, while actually trying to build an alien defense force complete with functional warp core and phasers built from stolen nuclear plant blueprints. Now that was a roller coaster of a story, one that doesn't have a ton to do with the TTRPG itself. I mean, there's not really ways you could have played it better at the table, so to speak. But whenever you're in a hobby with very eccentric people, you know, you meet up with strangers to play at the game table, he is totally right that you should vet them a lot better. And come on guys, you should have been way more forward with him saying like, dude, I don't know if he believes what he believes, but what he says is crazy. Just leave it be, dude. I know I joked about this earlier, but dude, how badly did you want to get out of being a forever DM that you jumped at the first person literally called Crazy Ted to try to play in his campaign? This is one of those stories where I question myself if it's real, but then I think about situations where there's probably people at conventions and Ren fairs that take LARPing really seriously and might be a little nuts. It isn't 100% clear if he truly believes it, but it seems like his girlfriend, which I'm shocked is real by the way, as well as his other two friends, are just serious LARPers. And yeah, sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference, but if he is truly ex-military with a few screws loose, maybe he does believe it. But hey, take it as a positive that if Crazy Ted can get a girl, just about anyone can get a girl. I guess you just need to treat them like an empress. So there is a lesson in that at least. This story was submitted to me through lootgoblinstories@gmail.com, and it was a really fun read regardless. I want to hear what everyone thinks in the comments below, and it's really cool to check my email and see that more and more people are sending stories. So thank you everyone again. Like and subscribe to the video if you want to see more of these. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now. Supps is doing a Christmas and July sale that I want to shout out. If you're the kind of person who likes buying in bulk, getting a bunch of tubs at once, this is probably the sale for you because I haven't seen so many freebies since I've been a partner here at Supps. And this is like the perfect time to get t-shirts, sweatpants, hoodies, things like that. Use the link in the description below and use code LootGoblin to get 10% off as well. It helps the channel grow, and this is one of my favorite sponsors that I've had since I've been a YouTuber. Just wanted to shout it out for anyone that's interested. See you guys later.